All right, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get started here. Today we're advanced drive control systems. We're going to be exploring iDrive technology. But before we jump into it, I do want to let everybody know we are recording this webinar. We will make this available as soon as possible after we wrap up. Usually it takes us about a week or so to get it posted, and it'll be on our YouTube page and our website. So you'll have options to catch it afterwards. If you have questions or anything, you'll have that video to refer back to. If you do have questions while we're going through this, please drop them in the Q&A, drop them in the chat. We'll do our best to get any answers that we can posted during the webinar, but if there's anything that we leave unanswered, we'll definitely follow up with that answer as soon as we can. All of the slides, the recording, any documents that we might talk about or look at during this webinar, we'll make sure to share that after we wrap up as well. And then last thing is, if you are still new to Teams webinar platform and English is not your first language, you can translate these slides. You'll translate what you are seeing into several different languages. So there's a set of ellipses on the top here, just 3 little dots. If you click on those, you'll have a function where you can translate, and you've got, like I said, a handful of languages to choose from. So in today's webinar, we're going to look at iDrive and the iDrive system. I'm going to try and talk about why it's a little different than other drive controls out there. And we'll also take a brief look into some of the settings that you might have available to you inside of iDrive that really help to tailor this system to individuals and their needs and performance characteristics for that system. So we'll go ahead and jump in here. So starting off, iDrive was born in 2013, really from a simple question that we asked ourselves. Why hasn't alternative drive control technology evolved, and how can we make it better? So that curiosity we had kind of led to the creation of this advanced drive control system. And so at the heart of iDrive, you've got a proprietary CPU system that it really works hand in hand with the iDrive config app and the inputs and things like that. And together, that's what allows for a very personalized system. We can personalize the settings, tailor that to each client's needs. So you have, when you fully utilize this system to its full ability to customize and things like that, the results should mean you've got a more responsive, smoother drive, and hopefully a noticeable improvement in just the overall performance of that drive control. So the best part is that when the driving feels more natural, more intuitive, your user's not trying to work as hard to operate that chair. So that should mean less effort and more comfort, just a better all-around experience, right? So the CPU that we introduced allowed iDrive to really set a new benchmark in what alternative drive controls can do. Because of its advanced processing speed, we give clients something that's very, very responsive. We get smoother acceleration, more precise handling, just better confidence when you drive, right? So it's all about delivering that performance that feels intuitive and feels empowering. And so that's where we focus on our efforts at iDrive. Now, the iDrive interface itself is a surprisingly versatile hub, and so I want to make sure we view it as a hub for alternative drive controls. It's designed with that modularity in mind, so it can support 6 different types of inputs, or 6 individual inputs. Sorry. And those could be sensors, mechanical switches, joysticks, sip and puff pneumatic switches, fiber optics. You can mix and match those as needed, and you can put up to 6 different things on one single interface, right? And so that's really going to allow us for pretty near limitless combination of tailoring this system to each client's needs. You can also, like I said, use almost any combination of these. You can seamlessly pair them with are like ridiculously big, large range of mounting solutions. So if you've ever looked through Stealth's catalog, we started as a mounting and hardware company, and so we've got a lot of options. So any one of those inputs that we're about to go through, we've got 2 or 3 or more ways you can mount it on just about any body part on a wheelchair. So you've got a lot that you can do with it, and that really allows us to place inputs just about anywhere for that optimal accessibility. And then when you get into it and start using the iDrive config app, we as providers, clinicians, technicians, what have you, we can fine tune the performance of those inputs to really match that client's needs, their abilities, what have you. So we can customize things like joystick settings, like deadband and throw distance. We can filter out like electrical signal noise for a lot more precision on our sensor activations. We can do double tap timings. We can set maximum percentage of the programmed wheelchair speed. So all of that within the iDrive to really give us a pretty unmatched level of precision, control, and more importantly, personalization out of our drive control. So here, just a couple of quick examples here of this ability to really create something unique out of that drive control. So this first video here, we have Rowan. He's using a lip and tongue to activate that drive control. And it's a fiber optic. So in this video, they're in a clinic. He's only going in forward directions right now, but again, iDrive is what's letting us do that. And so I kind of left it a little long so you can catch a glimpse there of the iDrive hanging off the side of the chair. And then we have in the second video a custom tray array. And so we've got several switches placed on the top of that tray so he can drive and manipulate that chair. Again, iDrive is letting us do that. We're able to plug in whatever kind of switch he needs there. And then here we have Pierce and his dad on the left. We'll kind of revisit Pierce here in a minute, but he's using a system that has a fully proportional joystick for forward and reverse at his hand, but we have sensors up there on the head for left and right. Juliana on the right there, she's got a Lexan lap tray, and that has been modified with 3 fiber optics. So iDrive, again, it makes it incredibly simple to make some of these fairly unique drive controls and configurations that don't necessarily exist right off the shelf. Now, I've kind of mentioned this a couple of times, but we do have an app that lets you make all these configuration changes. It's a free app. It works with iOS, with Windows. We'll be opening this up to Android early next year, but it does let us do several unique things inside of iDrive. So the iDrive config app, it's really meant to make us the setup of the system super easy, right? It lets you change configurations. You can make calibrations with the client. In general, you're just optimizing the performance of that drive control for that particular user. So we can really deliver that like tailored drive experience with hopefully minimal hassle here. The nice thing though is you almost, in most cases, shouldn't need this system either. But I do want to take a minute to slow it down and talk about what makes iDrive kind of a breeze to set up, right? So straight out of the box, it's already configured for a standard like 5-switch system. So that means there are ports already assigned for all 4 of your cardinal directions. You've got a port for mode. You can change these assignments as needed, right? You can change it to be a proportional forward and reverse, or a proportional left and right for some joystick control. You could set one port or one channel to be a safety switch that would halt all outputs from iDrive when it's activated. So it makes for a really cool feature when a head control driver might go into extensor tone, right? You could have them hit into that safety switch and stop all of their output when they're not in control of what their head's doing. So I think it's pretty important though that we know that the app is usually not required, right? I said that earlier. Because of all this default programming we're looking at right here, the interface can act in most cases more or less like a plug and play kind of a system, right? In the vast majority of cases, you don't need extra setup. There's hopefully no headaches. You just plug it in and go. And so if you're trying different switches, you just unplug one, plug a different switch in there. Don't necessarily need to program. By default, we are using the switch style output, but we can change that to proportional if you request it up front. And what that just means is how the chair is reading the signal from the iDrive. So the long and short of it is that for setup, iDrive is going to ship to you preset for as easy of an installation process as we can make it for you. If you order a combination system with mixed inputs, we'll have it set up and ready to just put on the chair. All you really need to do is just tell the chair what you've plugged in, right? You set the input and that's about it. So after that, the chair drives. All you really have left is to fine tune and make it perfect for that client. So right out of the box, hopefully it's pretty straightforward. Like I mentioned a second ago, hopefully 9 times out of 10, you're not needing to make these programming changes, but it's always good to know that you have those features available to you when you do need them. Now, the app also has a diagnostic screen that can become a really interesting tool. So it displays what commands iDrive sees coming into it from the client. So when proportional inputs are installed, it's going to proportionally scroll up those arrows, right, or across the arrows, whatever direction you're looking at, and it'll show you how much it recognizes the user activating that proportional input. Now, this is extremely helpful to sort out issues like bad switches or just drivability issues, right? One of the more unique things is this screen can be used for training. Once that driver control is installed, we can use it to show successful volitional activations before we turn that user loose and let them just drive through the environment, hoping for the best. So this is great when you're working to identify those access sites and maybe even look to start training them to build some repeatability in those access sites. But this diagnostic screen isn't really the only thing we have to help identify problems. We are able to also use this screen here to identify which channels or ports on the iDrive interface don't physically have something plugged in. So let's say I'm having a problem turning left, right? I can look at my app, I can check this screen here to see that the channels in this menu to see if iDrive even recognizes that something is connected, right? Does it physically see it in that left port or the port assigned to left? If not, I likely have a problem with that input, right? Could also be the port. If I see something plugged in, I can go back to that diagnostic screen, see if iDrive's recognizing that input is sending a command. Again, if it's not seeing that, we maybe have a problem with that input. But if all is good here and iDrive recognizes that something's plugged in, it's responding when there's an activation, then I can probably move to the chair. On QLogic, for example, I can see that if the chair is registering a command or not. So if it does, then there's probably an issue in between the chair and the drive control, right? Or if it does recognize that command, then I have a chair problem. So with these two things, we can really use these tools to have the system tell me where I should be looking for a problem rather than just kind of trying to troubleshoot everything until something tells me it's wrong. So we can get creative here. We can use these tools. We just have to kind of think through it logically and understand what these things are telling us. Now, for somebody who only has two safe, timely, efficient access sites, we can use iDrive to control the chair in a pretty intuitive way here. So iDrive has the ability to do something called linked left-right mode. And that's where left is left, right is right. If you hit them both together, you go forward. So you can see this gentleman here in this video. He's driving with this method. He's using sensors at his knees. And we can put these on adjustable medial thigh supports as well, or put them up on the arms, things like that. But like this particular setup, it works great for drive control for like bulbar onset ALS, where those guys lose their upper extremity mobility pretty early, but they're still walking and have decent leg control for a while. So this same method could be fiber optics at the end of the arm pads if needed. There's a lot of different ways we can use linked left-right mode. And now we can toggle into reverse using this, just like you would a head array. You can change modes with that, but these same two switches would control all of that, but how we do that is a little dependent on the chair. And now to answer the Q&A that Simon asked here, can linked drive work with RNet controllers? The answer is yes. The trick on RNet right now becomes how you toggle between forward and reverse. You currently will need to do like a forward reverse auto toggle that's set to a time, which is a little bit cumbersome and not really super fun if you're the driver of the chair. However, early-ish next year, hopefully in January/February timeframe, we'll have an update to our side that will make it a lot more successful for your RNet chair. So hopefully that answers your question there, Simon. All right. So as far as a checklist, to help with that flow, the evaluation and prevent anything from being missed, we don't really have one of those, Aaron, but we could definitely look into that. That would be a good thing to put together. But jumping back in here, I've mentioned that we have a few different input possibilities. We can create these unique systems using multiple inputs. So I just kind of want to walk you through a few of those real quick. First off here, we can use a proximity sensor. These can detect anything that's conductive, right? So if there's anything that has any sort of conductivity different than the ambient air around it that enters its little sensing field, it will trigger a response. So they don't need physical contact to activate. Every proximity sensor we use at Stealth is the same one. It's always going to have an adjustable or an adjustment screw here. So this little guy right here, and that will adjust its sensing distance. So you have a little light over here that shows activations, but these are really adjustable. They're meant to be reliable within about a 1 centimeter field, right? You've got about 1 centimeter maximum of consistent reliability here to operate that. So if you turn that screw all the way to the max, about 1 centimeter away, it'll start activating, or if you dial it back, you can put it to the point where you do basically have to touch the sensor to activate it, not necessarily put any pressure on it. So you have a nice ability to really get precise with how it senses an object. But the iDrive also supports a pretty broad range of mechanical switches, so it can be pretty adaptable in that sense to individual needs. It's going to accept any normally open switch with a standard just 1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter mono plug. So we should be pretty flexible there in hardware choices and whether you have tactile or audible feedback and things like that, right? You can pick the switch that user needs. The only thing is to connect those switches, you have this little dongle adapter, and that's all you're going to need to put in a mechanical switch. So we've got a variety of switch options you can see here on the screen. Any of these will have multiple ways you can mount, so you can really find the right fit for that client, their abilities, and their preferences. But again, don't forget any mechanical switch that's just your typical normally open 1/8" mono plug will be able to work with that as well. Now, your iConnect system, we do have a sip and puff system that transforms your like breath actions or more so pressure within the mouth into switch closures. So it's going to open up some new possibilities for users who might not be able to operate like that full suite of switches and sensors everywhere on the body or like on a tray or whatever. Um, so it's pretty reliable, it's intuitive, and can help to ease some like learning curve issues. So iDrive just sees this as, depending on how you're using it, as one or two mechanical switches. So it can be very simple to set up and really help to support that idea of adaptability to client needs. There's no calibrating this sip and puff. It's just one plug is for anything that's positive pressures. One plug is for anything that's negative pressures. So it's very, very simple. Fiber optics here are an option that are physically very small in size, but they should give you a big response, right? They're great for users who need something super responsive in a very tight space that can be customized, right? So we can combine these with other inputs to really create that like personalized drive control system. We can mount them pretty much anywhere on the chair. We've got like flexible pad mounts. We've got different flex tubes, lock line, things like that to get them all over the place. Or we can make custom mounts for them as well. But in essence, what happens with the fiber optic is you shoot a red beam of light out on one cable, and one other cable inside each of these tips here is looking for a reflection of that. You have about a 3 centimeter sensing distance in the ones we use. That's going to be consistently reliable. And within that 3 centimeters, you've got 9,999 points of precision that you can adjust to. So they can be incredibly precise. But you don't eat up a lot of real estate when you use these. So they're a very interesting thing. They are not as difficult as I think some people make them in their mind to set up either. They're super quick to set up. But now iDrive can be used as an interface for proportional joysticks as well. Right now we're limited to the 2 joysticks that we manufacture here at Stealth, but using them through iDrive really allows for some unique like client configurability, like specific to the individual driving that chair, right? So that concept I've been talking about, and just like the other inputs, you can use these in combination with different sensors, switches, what have you, to really fit the needs of that situation. When you do that, you're able to use these joysticks for not only forward and reverse or left and right, but you can split that, right? You can have, say, fiber optics for your turns and your joystick only for for forward and reverse. The first joystick here that we'll talk about is our Precision Mini Proportional Joystick. The sensor on this joystick has a pretty large throw distance for a joystick of its size. It's got an aluminum housing, so what this means is it's a pretty robust little joystick that with that large throw distance, that zone that the client has to operate the chair in is larger, meaning they can be more precise with the control of the chair. So we're able to mount this all over the place. It holds up really well. Like I said, aluminum, so it's pretty durable for a miniature joystick. And we can use this at the chin, at the hands. We've been pretty successful at most points for mounting this thing. Now our mushroom joystick is another one that we can drive through iDrive. I think it gets overlooked because the design has been relatively the same for a long time now, but the design is why this is such a great joystick, right? You don't need pincer grasping or much manual dexterity to manipulate this thing. The flat top side gives you a place to rest your wrist if you're using it with your hand. So the client can rest their arm on the arm pad. They can stabilize on the joystick with their wrist, and they're not working to stabilize that whole upper extremity while also trying to drive that chair. Now, we do also use the mushroom for foot driving quite frequently. So I won't claim that this is like a super low profile as a foot control or anything like that, but it does make for a very intuitive drive control, especially when the client lacks like range of motion in the ankle. So just a quick example here of someone driving iDrive as a mushroom. Um, so Riley here actually uses the mushroom as her foot control. You can see that her team did a 3D print, like a goalpost style topper that gives her something to grip onto with her foot. But overall, she's a pretty controlled driver. She gets turned around through that hallway and through that door without issue. She didn't take out the door frame or anything like that, right? So it does work extremely well for a foot control. Now, iDrive is available in several, we'll call them pre-configured systems here, right? These are your more traditional driver control systems. They require pretty minimal setup and configuration in hopefully most cases. We've tried to make sure that we've really optimized the performance of each one right out of the box. So for your more straightforward clients who just need a little bit more traditional solution, they can still get the benefits of some of the programmability and adjustment of iDrive and everything like that. But us as the people installing it hopefully have a little less work to do than building out a complete system from scratch. Now, we have several versions of iDrive joystick packages that we just looked at a couple of slides ago, right? We have 4 choices of the PMPJ, the Precision Mini Proportional Joystick. These are the 3 different topper styles, but we also have one that includes mounting hardware under that same part number. We also have a package for the mushroom. Now, these are great for when you're trying to build out that hybrid drive control system, right? If you're just looking for a standard joystick or one of these styles of joysticks without super custom programming inside of it, we have all of these 9-pin versions. So these really do function best as like a hybrid drive control place. They make a good jumping off point rather than starting from ground zero. We do have also 2 styles of Eclipse trays. The Eclipse tray arrays here, we have proximity that's going to come with 4 proximity sensors that you can place inside that tray. You can move them around inside the tray so that they're in locations that work best for the client. And then we have fiber optic trays that come with either 3 or 4 fiber cables. We can place those for you if we have good specs. We can go ahead and drill and mount for you so you don't have to do that. Or if you're not sure where they go, you can do it yourself. It's pretty quick and easy. So we do have 3 sizes of Eclipse trays. The small is the standard one you typically get. So there are 2 bigger sizes than what most often gets seen. But that curved shape of the Eclipse, it lets us put it a little closer to the user, but in a variety of angles, right? So you've got clearance for the abdomen. You can put it more under the side so that the user can like rest an arm and reach more or less across the tray with one arm, things like that. So you can get pretty creative with placement on this on this Eclipse tray. Now we do have multiple styles of Gatlins that these will mount onto, but we can also do these things in custom trays. So if you need something like we saw several slides ago with Juliana, who had 3 fiber optic switches in a Lexan lap tray, or if you need a custom palm tray, things like that, we have the ability to do all of those things. We're able to make more or less whatever kind of tray you need. We will have some limits, but don't be afraid to ask us. Now, Another quick example here of a tray array. We have Aaliyah, and this is just a quick short video of a trial she did with a tray array. A very short video. And it's got sensors placed on top so they can move those sensors around, find the right place to put them for her. She also has a little bit more obvious target while she's learning this drive control, but the sensors will usually get placed inside that tray for the final delivery and setup. Now, um, Aaron here. Aaron, to get a demo of the Eclipse tray, it will we can reach out to your local rep or New Motion. Both can help you out with that. I would start with New Motion. Likely they have something on site already. But now let's talk about head arrays. You might have noticed that I haven't shown or discussed them until now, and that's intentional. Right? I want to really drive home the point that iDrive isn't just a head array. It's the interface that works with the head array. I think we sometimes as a company we don't do a good job of talking about that. And if we think of iDrive as only a head array, we really limit the possibilities that it has. Sometimes we make it seem a lot more complicated than it is too. So for perspective on that statement, the only real difference between a proximity tray array and a head array is just how we mount the sensors. That's literally it, right? So our head arrays, we use a conventional 3-switch head control system here. We've got several styles to pick from, but typically these are for users with at least fair head control, right? Somebody who can stabilize their head, move against gravity for short periods at least. But what happens when fatigue kicks in or we're hitting that rear sensor consistently becomes a challenge. That's really not a big deal necessarily. All of our head arrays work pretty well with our head positioning systems, right? We covered those several months ago in this webinar series. So if somebody is close to being independently driving, but maybe they just need some way to get a little bit more extra, a little bit more head stability, we can easily add something like a sub-occipital support to their head array. And it's just a simple tweak that can really make a huge difference in getting them into that independent driving. Now, our tri-array is modeled after our combo series head supports, but it's meant to just be a very simple, visually clean drive control. It's all very low profile. It hides away behind the user fairly well. We do have ear cutouts to hopefully protect from extra contact there that we don't want. And we can still add swing away lateral supports, just to add a little more flexibility for us to increase like those secondary positioning supports on that head support. We can add things like mode switches with those swing aways, things like that. So it just gives us more flexibility to configure for that particular client. The curved tri-array, just like the tri-array, takes that less is more idea, but this time we move the left and right sensors around while we curve those side pads so that it fits the shape of a client's head better, right? While we're curving those pads, we're also moving the sensors forward a little bit compared to the tri-array. So what that means is the curved tri-array, in addition to being a little bit more ergonomic, it tends to work a little better for the client who might turn their head side to side to look into the direction where they want the chair to drive, where like the standard tri-array might be a little better for somebody who maybe does a little bit of lateral flexion and leads their head side to side to turn the chair rather than rotating their head. The Pro Series is an extremely adjustable head control. It lets you place sensors exactly where they need to be. So when you need adaptability, the Pro Series should be the go-to here. In fact, it's the one I prefer to take with me when I'm going to see a client I don't need to know if I need a bunch of adjustment or not. I know I've got it if I need it. I can still mimic the function and the feel of these tri-arrays, but you still have all of that adjustability when the time comes that you do find out you need it. So if you need one sensor, say on a shoulder rather than on a cheek or the side of the head, you can do that right out of the box here with this setup. We can add one little component to this setup, and now we can mount a mode switch down at the shoulder without very much hassle at all. So this Pro Series, it's not as visually clean as the two tri-array styles, but the sacrifice of cleanliness in visuals is where you gain all of the adjustment out of. So with Lyndon here, you're able to see we kind of did that thing we were talking about just now, where she uses the Pro Array head array, and we've used a figure 8 to add
like that.
A mechanical switch that's held down by the shoulder for her mode changes. So it's kind of tough to see here, but yeah, that's what she's got going on. Now, head array sip and puff combos are pretty intuitive drive control. It's got a very low learning curve. So we had a question about elaborating on sip and puff, and I did not ignore that. I just wanted to wait till this slide. So the typical setup with this style is for sip and puff is your forward and your reverse, and sensors for turns. And now, when I say sip and puff, it's positive intraoral pressure inside of that tube would give you your forward command, and negative intraoral pressure would give you your reverse command. You're not moving air, you're just creating pressure in your mouth. So if you can puff your cheeks out and hold that for a minute, you can drive sip and puff, right? You don't need to blow air. It's not a field sobriety test, right? You're not doing a breathalyzer or anything like that where you're blowing constantly. It's just puffing air in your mouth or making negative pressure. So that's all it is. You'll have tubing that runs into that little sensor or pneumatic switch here, and that's really about it. So it's pretty intuitive. When we're teaching individuals to drive a chair and more so to drive forward by moving their head backwards, that's not always an intuitive thing to master, right? It's a pretty weird feeling to say, lean my head back and now I'm driving forward. Or when a client might struggle to consistently perform that like flexion extension motion of the head to consistently strike that center pad or sensor in that center pad. The sip and puff combo here, this eliminates the need to perform that action. You can just rest your head on that pad and focus on driving through the sip and puff straw and your turns at your head. Now, here we do have a first-time driver, literally the first time driving a chair, right? This is just his first trial in clinic. You can see he's really held in a Nestimo chair with towels, with pillows, right? Seating's not right for him. But you can also see that with this system, he is able to maneuver surprisingly well, especially for this being the first time he's driving a chair. He's able to control his turns. He's even veering some pretty well. And he stops without running his mom over. I don't know about you guys. How many of you would stand directly in front of the chair for the very first time somebody's learning to drive it, right? Not me. I've been run over enough that I don't want to do that. So this is a great system to really reduce the learning curve for new drivers. But we do have a couple of other tools that we've created that can help us to train somebody with their drive control and help those new drivers out in a little bit of a different way. So I've mentioned earlier how diagnostics could be a really interesting tool for literally diagnosing a chair, and just kind of briefly mentioned about working on drive control access. So the story that really helped me understand this early on, When I came on board here at Stealth, was one of our reps at the time was in a clinic, and there was a kid in a Tilton Space manual chair who the family was very hesitant to try power. So they ended up setting up an iDrive on his manual chair. They powered it with a battery, and then they paired to this screen with their app. They had the app behind the chair so the kid couldn't see it, and they gave him a little bit of training, and in the end, they would push the chair wherever he activated. And after a bit of the training, they were able to show that he was a good candidate for a power chair. In the end, they did end up getting him in a power chair, um, right? Not necessarily solely because of this screen or anything like that, but they were at least able to ease some of the fears and anxiety that the parents had, so they could get him in a power chair more consistently. And in the end, he did go home with a power chair one day. So now that got us thinking: how could we use iDrive to help with that learning curve, right? How do we help with some of the fear and the anxiety? So to do that, we developed an iOS game geared towards some kids. We also um, we also built a VR system that's designed a little bit more for both, to help somebody learn to use their drive control, um, but also so they don't necessarily need to be in a power chair, right? Neither one of these require you to be in an actual power chair to do this. Um, I think a lot of us involved with power chairs, we've seen that there's a big hesitation um, to look at power from some families, right? Rightfully so. We see that the families might be really hesitant to put a kid in a chair, and as a result, very capable kids can be denied the chance to develop that like independent mobility at an earlier age, than they might once had. So the idea with loons here was to really find a way to let a kid practice operating their drive control in a safe way. All right, we saw that plenty of kids were playing these like super complicated video games, things like that, but getting no practice time on a drive control. So Loons is literally just a game that lets them practice their drive control, and this can be their drive control, right? So if it's a super unique setup, we can still drive Loons with it. Now there are 16 levels in Loons. They start with just a simple cause and effect stage and get progressively more difficult, adding in a little bit more requirement, right? Required successive commands. You've got veering, you've got course corrections. After each level, you get some generic results. And now we are making some changes here to improve the graphics, the user interface, things like that. So it's more appropriate for kids with, say, sensory and cognitive impairments. But you'll see an update of Loons earlier next year. So for adults, I'll go ahead and answer the question that just came in. For adults, I'm going to hold that question for one more slide, right? Here we have Pierce again. I did mention we'd come back to Pierce one more time. In this case, he is using a PMPJ to drive Loons. He's in his Tilton Space manual chair in this video. We spent all of about 10 minutes getting it set up with an iDrive, with the PMPJ. We gave him a different topper on top of that PMPJ that he could grab onto a little better. In that case, it was literally like an eraser from a pencil that was shaped like a pig. So he's able to feel out this joystick, get used to what it takes to operate it and maneuver it, how things might respond, all on his manual chair without moving through the world. So he took this home. We ended up putting sensors on there. And not very long after all of this, he got back in his power chair and was driving his power chair again. So stepping up into another level, we did recognize that Loons really wasn't ever meant for adults. We kind of saw a need for something similar for adults. And also we don't have any like sensation of movement, which is a big aspect of learning to drive your chair. So that's where iDrive VR came in. iDrive VR is a virtual reality-based simulator. It's designed specifically for power wheelchair driving in a virtual environment. So, what makes this special is how it can help add to the assessment and training process. We're not ever going to try to say it's replacing it or anything like that. It's just another tool in the tool bag. Um, Instead of being turned loose in a real chair, users can safely explore driving, but in a virtual environment. So that means fewer risks, less stress, a lot more flexibility, and there's also some clinical evidence to show that the concept works. Now, traditionally, driver training or training a new driver um, to move through the environment, it is going to require a lot of space. You might need specialized demo chairs and equipment. You need a very good fitting seating system for each client. That's not always practical, and especially in a busy clinic or a tight environment, things like that. And so with iDrive VR, we tried to flip that script a little bit, and clients can stay in their own seating system. You don't need to transfer them. You don't need to adjust that equipment, and they can do some training in the virtual world. And hopefully, the virtual world mimics enough of real life driving scenarios that they gain from it. So it can be efficient, it can be comfortable, and it can be very effective, right, in both assessment and skill building. So it should hopefully help save some time, some resources, keep that client a little bit more at the center of the experience rather than the equipment. Um, so it's not just a fun gadget either. It's been used in rehab since the early 2000s. There's plenty of research evidence showing that VR-based training in wheelchair skills really does mirror real-world performance. And so that means when somebody learns to drive in VR, those skills do directly translate into actual wheelchair use. So iDrive, we've tried to build on that foundation, give users a safe, repeatable, and reliable way to practice independently, build up their confidence, build up their driving skills, things like that. And iDrive VR is another one where we're actively working on major improvements to the way it works and the way the software works and how the environments feel and look. So keep an eye out early next year for some big improvements here. And yes, the plans are that it would work with most VR systems like the Oculus. So if your client can't do VR, right, if you have some vestibular issues or things like that, like VR might not be a great idea. The other great thing with the system is you can take those goggles off, set them beside your computer, and just play it like a video game on a computer. So your drive control still operates it. You're just looking at your monitor rather than through your VR goggles. So not necessarily always required to be VR. So to kind of wrap it all up here, iDrive is hopefully that intersection between like the advanced hardware, you've got some intuitive software, all of that's really able to deliver that customizable solution for somebody who needs a customizable solution. We're hopefully keeping that client at the center of everything when we're doing all of this, right? That's really the goal of those things like iDrive Loons and VR. We really want to give that person independence and make them the center of all of the effort rather than the equipment that it takes up a lot of the energy and focus now. So before I open the floor to some questions, I do want to remind everybody we'll send out a PDF copy of this presentation to anybody who's joined us. We'll get this sent out to the email that you registered under. I will include some safe links in there. I know it's getting harder and harder to click on links these days with IT systems, but those links will send you to a quiz for CEC credit if anybody is interested in that. And then also a link to just a general survey about the experience. I do want to make sure that these webinars are worth everybody's time. You do learn something from them. And if there's any way we can make it better, I want to know it. So let us know. We'll make this recording available on demand on our website and YouTube page as soon as we can, usually within a week or so. And from that, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll get them answered for you. Other than that, that is all I have for you guys, and I do appreciate your time today. And join us again next month. We've got one last one for this. We've got one more webinar coming up next month, so it'll be our last one of the year.